Thanks. Hello, everyone. This is Ricardo Molina from Brightball, and today we have our first series of inbound marketing stories. And I am joined by Andrew Ferguson from BrainXchange. How you doing, Andrew?
Hey, Ricardo. Doing great. Thanks for having me on here.
That's good. That's good. So Andrew is the co-founder of BrainXchange, and they have started their inbound journey probably about 12 to 18 months ago. And I wanted to bring him in this particular session because I think there's a lot of organizations out there that are considering or are thinking of doing inbound or content or starting somewhere, but it will be worth kind of hearing the stories, not from my point of view, but hearing it from your point of view. So I'll appreciate, and I'm sure the audience will appreciate your views and thoughts about it. So do you want to introduce yourself and see what you do, and what BrainXchange does, and the areas that you guys cover, and then we can just kind of crack on with the interview.
Yeah, sure. So I'm one of the co-founders of BrainXchange, and we're a boutique conference organizer. We're a team of about 5 people now, and we specialize in organizing more of the intimate to the mid-size, 300 to 400 person conferences in the emerging technology space. So companies like Caterpillar, PepsiCo, Coca-Cola, Fortune 100 companies that are looking to educate themselves on how to leverage emerging technologies to improve their operations. And we're a conference organizer and kind of bring together those folks to kind of provide them a platform to share knowledge and network with each other and educate themselves.
Excellent. So, and I think obviously, Andrew, we've connected probably about 18 months ago when you guys were looking at launching your company. I think it was it 18 months ago, wasn't it? Probably.
Yeah, it was about it. Yeah, maybe even a little bit longer. Okay. I'm not sure, but yeah, my other colleague Jeffrey Friedman, who's the CEO and original founder of our company, had been following your blog for a number of months before we kind of put together our business plan. So that was like, there really wasn't any other resource to go to that had valuable information. There was kind of some other blogs out there, but there wasn't like real tangible takeaways. I think you still really only have the only place to go.
Appreciate it, Andrew. So I think on that note, I guess the first conversation that we had at that point in time was like you guys wanted to launch your business with a pure content background, with a pure content foundation, and you wanted to go inbound from the word go. Can you tell us a little bit more? Why did you decide to do it that way, and what do you see as the benefits of doing it that way?
We've worked for some of the larger conference houses out there, and we saw like it was like the same old traditional style, like blast out an email, hope for the best, not really tracking anything. Some of the organizations didn't even use Salesforce, let alone use marketing automation. Actually both of the companies I worked for, and Jeff actually worked for 3 different companies, and none of them had active blogs. No content really outside of the event. It's just like set up the event, get the agenda, and the conferences were decent, but there was no content around it. So in terms of actually getting attendees, getting sponsors, adding value to all of those folks, it really just was near impossible. It was like it was kind of like click and pray. Whereas content, we know, an ongoing stream of content, getting people engaged with what you have to say and kind of your unique differentiators, leads to them registering for a conference. We've gotten to the point where most of our registrations actually, trickle in from our blog, from our marketing automation, whether it's a drip campaign or a customized like attendee campaign that we run as like a cadence. Almost all of our registrations come in that way. There's a little bit of hand holding, a couple phone calls here and there, but it's a huge difference from when you're just calling somebody blindly and trying to figure out what they're doing, how they're relevant for the conference, not really having an insight into what they've been reading, what they've been checking out, and things like that. Whereas if you have the content, you can see what they're consuming.
That's very true. And I think you know, at that point in time, you obviously had to make your decisions within your budgeting, et cetera, et cetera. So what do you see as being the business case for, let's call it creating a community, call it creating content, or using content to drive, you know, to drive event registrations? What's the thought process behind it, and what do you see as the big deciding factor that would make a co-founder or CEO or an MD of an events business to decide to go and go ahead for it?
Yeah, and well, I guess in terms of budgeting, you know, the overhead as a conference organizer as a whole is very low. Just in general, if you're not part of a publication, and you know, your overhead and is really human capital. So it's largely a human capital business. So you need to invest in you know, the right people, and you need to invest in, you know, enabling those right people with the right technology and the right solutions to have a meaningful conference, you know, and content goes along with that. You know, if you don't have the right content, then you can't really get those insights that you would need to get the right attendees, because anybody can just throw together an event, send out 40,000 emails and hope for the best, but then you're not going to get the right people to your conferences. There's going to be people upset. It's just not going to be a high quality event.
Right. And when you're looking at kind of potentially setting a high investment, because let's just be honest, it's investing in content and investing in
it should be your largest investment as a conference organizer, in my opinion, and that's what we believe here. You know, your biggest investment should 100% be in content and, you know, creating that funnel, because then you no longer need you know, all these big conference companies use these big delegate sales teams, and they're just pounding the phones away. You can kind of cut out like at least 80% of that by having the proper inbound channels, you know, and then only having a handful of those folks kind of just calling the right people. You know, there's a lot of wasted time that are taking a lot more resources than it would if you just made the investment, which is a significant investment. We pay more in you know, CRM and marketing automation, almost double than what we do on our office lease. So that just goes to show like how important it is for us. So
okay, so and I think obviously you from your point of view, you've seen the value of it, and then you've decided to do it from the word go. So in essence, if you are going to, let's just make this assumption that business organizations are, or any other colleagues that are at a conference for conference professionals, you speak to someone in the networking event or anything like that, and some other CEO or some counterpart says to you, what would be the 3 key things that you need to consider before jumping into this journey? What would you say?
Well, I think the number one thing is you have to have the content. You know, there's no sense in having a marketing automation system or even putting together an inbound plan without content. You know, you got to get your blog going, or however you're getting that content out there. You need to have that content and build a content plan first, and it needs to be consistent. You know, you don't want to lose people by doing one blog post and then not doing another like 3 months until 3 months later. You're never gonna have a steady flow of people. So getting that content plan in place is the number one thing, and, you know, maybe building a newsletter to kind of start getting subscriptions, something along those lines, and then try to think about, okay, how can I take this information, this small maybe newsletter list, and kind of figure out the best plan, you know, the best way to kind of engage with those folks before you even think about a marketing automation, because you know, it's really not that powerful until you have that content and then you have that network of people to market to. I don't know if that's probably the number one. And then number 2 is, I guess, doing your homework when you are ready to go to kind of like the marketing automation stage, whether it's Pardot, Marketo, HubSpot, whatever it might be, is actually laying out a plan for your marketing automation. So your drip campaigns, how do you want those to work? What emails do you want? Which people do you want getting what emails at what time, what frequency? And there's a lot of trial and error. Definitely can't be scared to kind of try different things. And then number 3, I guess, is, you know, making sure that you have the person in-house dedicated to it. You know, without the one person really dedicated to this and not working on 15 conferences at a time, but maybe, you know, really focusing on keeping these things organized, and then, you know, managing the back end of the system.
I think that's fine. So I think just to summarize is having the right content structure, right? Having the right content
Right.
structure, knowing exactly how you're going to write that content. The other aspect was building your funnel and knowing exactly how is that going to work out at the top, middle, at the bottom of the funnel, building the drip campaigns, and having the right person, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I think you've mentioned something very interesting, which kind of is part of key of your story. So before making a decision on what platform you're going to be using, because you have to go through certain motions. But actually, is that possible? Do you think inbound marketing or content marketing can be done without a system, without a tool?
Without any tool, no, not really. I don't think. But there are cheap enough tools to get your feet wet. Like I used, I think it was called Jump Lead for about 6 months.
Right.
Very inexpensive, and I could get a feel for how drip campaigns might work, and at least see the reporting of all of our blog posts and kind of tracking, like the movements of our visitors, seeing how they're consuming content. Getting a feel for that. Was essential to kind of building out our content plan.
Right.
So having something, I think you can even do it for free to start. So you can just play around with it and just get your feet wet with how one of these systems works. I think that, like, had I not done that, I probably would have made a lot more mistakes.
Right, because I think obviously there's obviously 5 key leaders in the industry, which we've got content to share that I'll probably share it in those about who they are. But then the initial decision that you had for going to jump as a Jump Lead was it because of the budget? Was it because of financial?
Yeah,
because it was too expensive and the cost of onboarding, or why did you decide to go for a cheaper version and not kind of, because now, I think now you are on Pardot
we're on Pardot now. I didn't want to, like, I guess the initial investment for one of those 5 major systems. You're talking 100 hours just to get set up on your own kind of work, and you're talking 10,000 plus commitment up front to kind of get those price breaks that you need in terms of your contracting with them. Contracts are a nightmare with any of those companies.
Right.
And that's Pardot included, even though we love the service. So I just wasn't going to do that before I just played around with everything. And I was glad I did, because I kind of narrowed it down to, the two companies that I wanted to go with. The first one was Marketo, which was a complete disaster. But and we eventually landed with Pardot, and it was great.
Right. Why? Just out of interest, why was it a disaster? And this is not kind of obviously. I don't know why. Why do you think was a disaster?
Because I didn't have the capability, like coding wise, it wasn't simple setup. It was a pain in the butt to get the plugins for Salesforce to work well. It just the setup process, and they have their own unique code that you have to use for landing pages, for emails, so it's almost like learning a whole new code structure for setting up everything. So it was just it wasn't the right solution for us, being a small, nimble team, and none of us are complete experts on web design and things like that. So we would have had to outsource all of that.
I see. That's kind of interesting to learn, because I think there are some other solutions which kind of provide a better answer. But the conversation on this particular interview is not about solutions. It's not about everything. Right. It's just about you as an individual, you as the owner of an event business, and how are you going to be able to get those delegates through the door. So 18 months down the line, after doing content, after doing inbound, after building the funnel, what are your learnings, and how fast do you think, from your experience, you can start getting results from it? So I guess it's probably 2 questions. So how fast do you think getting this engine up and running, if you're doing it yourself, is going to take you? And then what will be your 3 learnings as a secondary question on that follow on?
Well, once you have the content set up like that, we saw instant results. Like, just to give you an example, we switched over to Pardot in January. We had results by February. but we already had content in place. So we had things to use in our kind of cadence emails, and our drip campaigns. So we had all that content ready to go. It's just with Pardot, we could do the automation in a way that we were able to instantly see results. We were getting delegate registrations immediately, and a significant ROI difference over just personalized reaching out, individually, like calling, emailing, the normal kind of sales cycle without a marketing automation system. We were achieving that on a crazy scale, like tens of thousands of people at a time versus, what can one salesperson do in a week? Maybe, 300-400 touch points per week, something like that.
Right.
With an automation system set up right, you're talking, very targeted, same kind of process to the masses.
Right. And just kind of, Andrew, on that specific note. So obviously, this is not about Pardot, this is not about the systems, but what I'm really trying to kind of aim to share with the rest of the community is how long before Pardot, obviously you kicked off with Jump Lead or with your previous system, but setting this content campaign, how long do you think it took you before you created the content and started putting it?
Yeah, at least 6 months. For us, anyways. There was a lot of things we didn't really know where to begin when we started. We're just going based off of our research and our experience working for other conference companies and what we thought would be best. So a lot of trial. You need at least 6 months of trial and error.
And then to decide of that. And again, once you went onto your new system, that you already had that content that you could actually repurpose and start doing all the things. And did you do the content yourself, or you've hired? We
do everything internally ourselves, outside of like website styling, front end and back end design. Everything we do in house.
So managing your inbound process,
content writing, everything.
Managing your inbound process. Is you another member of the team, I guess, creating the content, and is there anyone else that is involved in the whole process?
My colleague Emily Friedman, she kind of heads up all the content and marketing. So she creates all the content, and then I along with all of us kind of have a hand in everything. We always very open office, kind of discussing ideas out loud. But she definitely creates all of the content. She's the one kind of heads down right into the industry and becoming that expert, per se, in the industry. Almost similar to like what a conference producer would do, but more from a marketing perspective.
I see. That was the point, because a lot of the events professionals, the question is always, should the producer write the content, or should the marketer write the content? What would be your answer to that?
That really depends on the person, the individual, and what their capabilities are and what their expertises are. But I think it's a collaboration for sure. A marketer is going to write in a different way than a producer will. But in terms of how a conference company works, I think it's important for everyone on the team to have done and know how to do every role, from delegate sales to sponsorships to producing to marketing. Everyone has to have at least the capability to do the basics of everything. So I guess that the easiest answer to that is you got to be set up right from the ground up as a company. In my opinion, you can't have a successful delegate salesperson that doesn't understand the other components of a conference.
Right.
You can make it work, but then you're just going to stay being a transactional company.
So what I guess in your specific case, Emily, she's not a producer. She's just she's a content.
Right.
She could produce this content that with the main aim to engage your community. Is that right?
Exactly. But in her onboarding, when we first started the company, Jeff and I trained her on all aspects of every role in a conference company. So I think that's probably a huge gap for a larger company to overcome, because they're hiring producers, they're hiring salespeople, and training them as that one position. So I think that's where kind of the issue comes in. Like I'm just thinking about one of the companies I worked for before. It would be impossible to implement something like this, because of the structure of the company.
Right.
You would have to, go back and kind of retrain everybody.
So in a way, again, that's kind of what normally tends to happen with organizations that are larger. They always think, okay, where is the responsibility? Should we give the responsibility to producers? Should we give the responsibility to the marketeer? And I think some of the arguments, certainly from what I've seen, is exactly as you've mentioned it.
Yeah, it's a problem.
You have to restructure it. And what I always say is you have to have one person writing content. That's period. They have to stop producing. They have to stop doing the 20 conferences that they have to market. They have to produce that specific content. They need to have an idea of marketing. They need to have an understanding of the buyer, of who's going to attend the event, and then work in conjunction. So, which ultimately means hiring an extra person or shifting roles internally, which I guess that's kind of what you and I understand. What's the roadblocks?
Yeah, no, that's definitely the roadblock for the bigger companies, which is weird because we're a small organization. If we can afford to, afford the salary and everything that all the overhead that goes along with having only a writer, that's Emily's full-time job is writing. If we can afford it, that's ridiculous that a bigger company couldn't afford it.
Right. So, and I think I am conscious of the time and I'm respectful of it. So, what I guess the ultimate question, just two questions, which I hope are not unfair on you, but what would you say? What is the ROI? What is the return on investment on inbound, and what is the return on investment on writing content? And this is content that is not about your conference. It's content that is written to engage your individuals. What is the ROI, and how would you measure that? And in your case, how are you measuring that?
It's really difficult to measure. I don't care what tool you have in place. It's very difficult to know exactly what that person's first touch point was. Right. Because they could have read something on somebody else's website and then ended up on your website. So the true ROI really is something that I guess you can't, it's important. We calculate in our reports where everybody comes from what we can track, but we also, in the back of our minds, we realize there's a number of different touch points that add value to the campaign that you might not necessarily have control over tracking. Right. So it's tough to give like exact metrics. Right. Really just focusing more on the overall ROI of an event versus the overall ROI of an event if we didn't have these things in place.
I see.
And it's not even comparison. As a small, very flexible company, we wouldn't be able to survive without a structure like this.
Right.
We wouldn't be able to compete.
Do you use, like, for instance, do you measure the number of leads that you generate on a monthly basis or for an event or anything?
I mean, we go even more narrow than that. Total numbers don't mean anything. It's only the right people that matter to us. So when we're in an event cycle, let's say starting 6 months out from an event, leading up to the event, we'll average about 200 inbound leads per week. Right. And out of those, there's maybe 15 or 20 true leads. And then out of those 15 or 20 true leads, you're going to close maybe 5 to 10% of those. Right. So if you're getting a handful of delegates a week, you're getting a good kind of audience at that point. I don't have the specific metrics right in front of me right now. So maybe I'm not prepared.
No, it's not. The intention is.
We definitely track all of that. I just don't weigh a lot of. I don't make too many decisions strictly based on that, I guess.
All right, on those specific metrics. And I guess it's because of the size of your team. You're already communicating. You already know exactly. And obviously, you are very submerged in the whole process. Yeah. So you are, I guess, exactly what's happening. And I guess the final one, Andrew, before I let you go, is so the traditional events professional, the traditional leader, normally kind of says social media does not work. Content does not work. That's a whole lot of rubbish. What's your view on that?
That's ridiculous, and that train of thought is why I'm able to charge double and triple what some of these other companies are in both attendance fees and sponsorship fees, because I can offer on a unique group that only has their buyers, strictly, kind of targeted for our sponsors customers, we can put a featured post on there, and that allows me to charge a couple extra $1,000 on a sponsorship, and that's something tangible that they can see a result on. Without any of this in place, I don't have anything to show my sponsors. It's just like, did you have a good time at the event? Okay, great. We're going to increase it 10% next year. Whereas now I can go back to them and be like, well, this blog post did this, this did this, and this did this. So are these things you want to keep doing? And actually show them the results. There's no more like question about whether it was valuable or not. It's right there in front of them. So you don't have that churn of having to get new sponsors every conference. Instead of, I think most of the bigger conferences try to get 50% of their sponsors back every year. This will enable you to keep 80-90% of them, because if you have the right sponsor, there's no, and all of these things in place, there's no way to not provide value.
That's good. And what about social media? Does it work?
100%. We wouldn't survive without social media. LinkedIn alone, we're doing a very niche, very targeted conference right now, focusing on the enterprise use of wearables. And we wouldn't be able to identify these folks without social media. You can Google all you want. You cannot find these people. You can't buy a list. You can't do anything. You have to, handpick and get in front of them through LinkedIn, whether it's a posting, whether it's a group. You wouldn't be able to survive without LinkedIn for a B2B conference. In terms of, maintaining the price points that we have and quality.
That's good. Well, I think, Andrew, that's a lot of information, and I do really appreciate your input on it. Just actually a specific disclaimer. I mean, Andrew is not one of my clients yet. No. We just have a good relationship, and then we've had a lot of these sort of conversations over the phone over the months, and then I thought that since that's what inspired me starting these inbound marketing stories to get the word out and to have people like you sharing the stories with other events professionals, because I think one of the biggest aspects that I think I am always highlighting to the events professional is that you have to start somewhere. You have to start soon, because by the time you start having your results, by the time you're going to start, it's going to be almost a year, and you better get going, because people like you at this point in time are like a new organization, flexible. You have at this point in time 18 months advantage in the learning curve that other people have. So, and I think is an aspect of, and I don't know if you agree with me, that is an aspect of working towards getting the results that you really want first, as opposed to waiting until you have the resources in terms of staff or team, because you're constantly hiring and things are kind of very unpredictable when you're kind of expecting on human capital. Would you agree with that?
100%. 100%. There's no excuse, zero excuse for any company in the world to not think about this and start implementing right away.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Andrew. I'm going to put all your website's link on the notes for this post, and I really appreciate your time, and till we speak again.
No problem. Sounds good. Have a good one, Ricardo.
Thank you. Take care.